Whoa, what you've done is good. The answer to this question is it's one of the answers that I'm happiest. I didn't always love the answer to this question, but I'm excited to tell you the answer to that question is I don't know.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
What is up, everybody? Thank you for stopping by the show this week. I'm super stoked about my guest, as you will hear in our conversation. He's one of the guys that I started following when I started to get into comedy, and I am pumped as pie that he is on my podcast this week and next, because you know what? We talked for nearly 2 hours together, and so I'm going to split that into 2 different episodes. Gotta milk those Myq Kaplan podcasts while you can. Myq is hilarious. He is a headliner with specials on multiple different platforms. He has one called AKA that I'm excited to check out. He has another one that he's recently finished making, that he made with his partner, his lady, and I just can't wait to see that. So we hit it off. We have a couple mutual friends, but we've never worked together, never really chatted before. And so for a first conversation, it just felt so nice to be able to get to know each other a little bit and flow and banter and have a good time. He's a good man, in addition to a great comic. And it was just a wide-reaching episode that got me thinking in a lot of different ways. So I'm stoked for you to be able to listen to it. And I'm not going to talk too much in the intro this week, but I do want to take a moment to thank my very fake sponsor, Myq's Mills. You want a paper mill, sawmill, steel mill, sugar mill? Call Myq. Myq has his mills, but they are, of all the things, not Myq. So if you ever need a mill, go to Myq's Mills, and you'll find them. My cat says so too. So without further ado, I hope you appreciate my conversation with the one and only Myq Kaplan. Thank you, and let's welcome to Jokes and the Gym with Rudy Tyburczy. I'm your host, Rudy Tyburczy. Super stoked to have my guest on the pod today. He's been a favorite comedian of mine for years. I've been following him and his work for a long time. So I was pleased as punch when he was able to be on the podcast. He has a variety of specials you can find on multiple platforms. He has multiple podcasts as well. Broccoli and ice cream, as well as what's the other? The Faucet. I just learned of The Faucet today by a quick Google search. And he's also has a book coming out that a friend of his has designed illustrations for jokes of his. A new special coming out in the near future. Everyone, give it up for Myq Kaplan. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing the research. I appreciate it. Thank you for being not just regular Clark Kent stoked, but super stoked. I'm also, it's always a pleasure to come on a show that you're invited to and the person knows and likes and has learned something about you, as opposed to sometimes you go, I love doing a morning radio show, going in and they're like, all right, welcome to Who Are You and tell us why you're here. You know?
Everyone, welcome Myq Kaplan.
That is my preferred pronunciation. Yes, of course.
Ooh, yeah. Do you get, what's the worst you've gotten, or what did you used to get with the name? Anything weird?
Lots of things weird. Certainly Myq here and there, understandable. Myq, is that French? You know, lots of things. Yeah.
Is it French? Is it Myq?
Great question. It's, you know, I feel like for myself, I pronounce it Myq, you know, like your classic Myq, and it is something that I did bring upon myself by changing the spelling, not the pronunciation. when I was a teenager, when Prince changed his name to a symbol, and I was like, that's inspirational. And then I was like, I'll do something even less weird than that. But then eventually he changed back, and I was like, now I'm alone. But yeah, it's something I was, assigned Michael at birth, and eventually was like, no, I think I was at an artsy summer camp. I was, with a bunch of misfit, theater kids and other like performers and artists and, just a bunch of weirdos, self-identified, happy to like people fit nowhere else, all fit together,
Yeah, of course.
And so yeah, that was where I first, I guess, started playing around with letters and words and sounds, and
I love that.
And so yeah, it's definitely, I understand if people don't recognize it, people don't understand, but yeah, it's all good by me. I'm I'm a many privileged human being, a cisgender, straight, white, American, able-bodied male. So yeah, I'm taking, I'm putting a few obstacles up in my own way.
Make it harder.
It was the game. The game was too easy. So how about a weird spelling to trip us up? Every once in a while, people have questions. People have their own ideas. But yeah, I'm here. I'm Myq. I'm happy. Thank you.
I love it. Nice. Yeah, I love it when my friends get my name wrong. Still, it still happens all the time. They're bringing me up. I got my friend. I was staying on her couch in Singapore, and she introduced me as Ruby Tyburczy, which is nice, but it's not quite it. There might be a Ruby Tyburczy out there, but it's not right here. It's not this guy.
Yeah. So you mentioned graciously, as you asked me what things you might mention, the book that I have does exist now via my website and my friend Ramin Nazer's website. I almost said Ramin Neighbor. He's my neighbor. Not in geography. He does live in LA. I live in New York. But if I almost said his name wrong, he's my neighbor, Ramin Neighbor.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, his name is Ramin Nazer, and sometimes people will pronounce it like Ramin Nazer, or, sometimes then he will lean into it and be like, I'm Ramon, his name's Ramin.
Yeah.
And I like that. I feel like it's, I think it's Maya Angelou who said, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And then I don't know if she said additionally, but it seems to go along with it. If people tell you who you are, don't believe them, unless if they got it right, then great. But like, you get to determine who you are. But also, I feel like it's sort of there's like a Buddhist middle path aspect of this possible, where if somebody gets my name wrong, I guess I would say it's my favorite if people get my name right. But if they get it wrong, my favorite way to react is to not be super, pissed off about it. Just be like, hey, that happens, roll with it. So neither do I want to be walked all over, but I also don't want to walk all over anyone. I just want to kind of like let's go. Let it be.
Absolutely, yeah. Couple things. A friend on the podcast last week, his name's Abhishek Kulkarni. He's a very good friend of mine, comedian here. He does have some Boston connections as well. Just finished a degree in art. And he said he says a little prayer before he goes up on stage, essentially that says something along the lines of, may my words bring joy to others. Something along those lines. And it moved me to tears when he was telling me this, because it's such a beautiful idea that I don't think we as comedians keep in mind. I think it's so much of this aggressive, go on the attack, that when someone consciously puts that in their mind before a set, I think it does nothing but good things. And I kind of do a similar thing by writing joy or fun or something like that on my set list, to something I want to try to imbue in there. Do you take a similar approach in your comedy?
Thank you for asking. Thank you for sharing that. That's a beautiful story. Let me say this. Number one, so may my words bring joy to others. I would like to say a brief prayer right now. May my words bring tears to your eyes as well. It's a competition. I don't want to lose it.
Coming for you, Abby.
So a friend of mine, another comedian, told me about Jack Lemmon, I believe, was in a movie, the name of which I forget, but it involved him doing a shot. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Shot of alcohol. And when in the movie he took the shot of alcohol, I believe his character said magic time. He just said magic time and took that shot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then my understanding is, if I now it's like a game of telephone, yet it's still, I was the one who was told, but I'm like, I think this is what he said, that then for the rest of Jack Lemmon's career, every time he would, and this is the part that I'm slightly hazy on, it's either every time work on a new movie began, or every time like the day of shooting began, or every time a scene began, at one point, at some beginning, every new beginning, Jack Lemmon would say magic time, even though he wasn't doing that specific shot of alcohol. He would say magic time. And furthermore, my friend then said he made a point to strive to, whenever he woke up, he would say magic time, just every day, new day, magic time. And so I shared that with my girlfriend, who I live with, and she liked it. We like it together. So now I frequently wake up a little bit earlier than she does. And we have a lofted studio, so I am downstairs. She is upstairs that way right now. And so often I will be here, like either reading or working on the computer or what have you. And sometimes the way that now she usually lets me know that she is awake is I will hear a very gentle, just awakened magic time, or magic time, and then magic time. And it's a nice call and response ritual, much like, I don't know if do you or anyone you know do, like at the first of the month, try to say rabbit first thing. Have you heard of this?
I haven't heard of this. Is that like a good luck charm?
It is. It's I had a past relationship where a particularly a more superstitious partner than I am or have now, but it's, to the point that if it doesn't happen, if I realize that I didn't say rabbit at the beginning of the month, I don't believe that any extra like tragedies will befall me, just the classic regular number of tragedies that we're already going to happen.
Yeah,
but
just those ones.
But when I do think about it, I think it's just an extra bonus nice thing to remember, like, I think that it's good luck to believe in good luck. Like, I don't think you have to believe in bad luck. It's just like a nice thing. Like, it's sort of like a potential self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a shape of this. Oh yeah. So I think I was emailing, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I think I was emailing with a friend recently, and one of us wished the other person well, well wishes. And I think like maybe they said, I wish you well. I was like, well, your wish is granted, because by the very fact that you are wishing me well, I am well, at least in that I have this friend who wishes me well. It's really nice. I mean, during the beginning phases of the pandemic, when things were locked down and I was doing like many more like live stream shows and podcasts and stuff from home, I remember one time specifically somebody asked me like, how are you? And every time somebody asked me, how are you? I really, even if it was just like, how are you? That's my first initial question. Let's move on to the bulk of what we're talking about here.
Right.
But I would answer it sincerely that like I am, at least in part, like I contain multitudes. One of the multitudes I contain is Walt Whitman, who contained multitudes himself. So it's like an inception Ouroboros of multitudes.
It's multitudes of multitudes. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yes, MOM for short, multitudes of multitudes.
I love Mom.
Yeah, we were talking about moms off air before we started. Shout out to moms, without whom most of us wouldn't be here.
Shout out.
And shout in as well. Shout out, shout in. If you just do shout out, that's just so. If we're doing more anagrams or acronyms, it's weird. For as much as I care and think about words, I often do scramble initially. anagrams and acronyms. I wish they sounded different, but they sound pretty similar.
Pretty
This
close.
is all to say, somebody says, how are you? I say, part of how I am is grateful that there is someone who, even if they are just doing it in an obligatory way, are going through the societal, communal motions of expressing care.
When we talk about the weather, we are not talking about the weather. We're talking about, I care enough about you to spend time interacting. And that's why small talk is never quite as small as it may seem.
Oh, yeah. You know, you just reminded me. I wanted to remember this, and now I do. Thank you for your service. I checked into a hotel a couple nights ago in the DC area where I was performing, and the guy behind the desk who was checking me in had a name tag that said, among other things, it said his name, but under that it said, my passion, the weather. And I really don't know. We didn't chat much more because there were people behind me that needed to be checked in. But I really was wondering, is that truly his passion, or is that truly his way to say, please don't ask me any more questions?
I mean, did you get the vibe that it was a sarcastic kind of thing? Like he wouldn't have welcomed weather talk? Or was that just something to break the ice, if you will?
Whoa, what you've done is good. The answer to this question is it's one of the answers that I'm happiest. I didn't always love the answer to this question, but I'm excited to tell you the answer to that question is I don't know.
Yes.
But classic. I learned that from the Dalai Lama, among others, and my friend Myq. But the Dalai Lama once said to and I don't know if he said it only once or more than once, but at one point at least, somebody asked him a question. He's like, "That's a very good question," and the answer is simple. I don't know.
The Dalai Myq.
Here's one other thing that I do know, sort of rounding out the question that you asked. And again, I love that I am going to start. I plan to, if not all the time, at times, start saying, may my words bring joy to others, or to all even. Why not even myself? Throw myself in there.
Bring a few extras in.
Absolutely. And here's one other thing that I do at times when I think to do it, and I strive to think to do it at meal times. Are you familiar with Ram Dass?
Yeah, Ram Dass.
Spiritual teacher. I read a thing that he, before each meal, would give, a prayer of gratitude, a thanks. As I don't think he's the person who invented it. He might have, what did he call it? Grace, saying, I think Ram, the creator. No, but he would think about, he talked specifically about how he would think about the food that he was about to eat, and that the food was going to become him, that the hunger that was a part of him it was all this cyclical process that, all of these things were, depending on your definitions and your belief systems, part of the everything that is God. And so sometimes, or the universe, or, the here that we are now, as in his classic title, Be Here Now. And so sometimes when I sit down to eat something, I will say a version of thank you, food God, thank you, hunger God, thank you, God, thank you, me God, thank you, all God, thank you, thank God. And sometimes I forget to do it, and I'm in the middle of my first bites, and I'm like, oh, thank you, God, thank you, bites, thank you.
We're happy to be here. Didn't forget you.
Yeah. It's happening, and like the good news is, so a friend of mine once did an ayahuasca ceremony, psychedelic journey of a sort, and one of the things that he experienced that I love is he shared that he saw this woman who kind of represented the universe or God or something as such, and that she was smiling, and she also said, I'm smiling at you even if you aren't looking, even if you don't know that I'm smiling at you, like kind of the same way that the sun is shining, even if the clouds are blocking it, the sun is still there. It is equally light and warm as it always is. And so this is all to say, for the listener, for the viewer, for the atheist, I was once like you. Now I am like, why do we have to talk about it? Because I brought it up. Fair enough. But I think this works regardless, the same way that there's a Neil deGrasse Tyson thing. He said once, the great thing about science is that it works even if you don't believe in it. And then I heard this other thing by it was about basically the same is true of magic. Whatever it is, things work whether or not you believe in them. I saw this Taoist quote recently that was like, don't do anything and everything gets done. We think we have everything will get done. I mean, maybe you won't go to the store and buy the thing that you want, but everything that does happen. So this is all to say the thanking the God terminology is not required, and I feel like it's the thanking is the thing that creates sort of the engine, the engine of gratitude churns regardless of who is doing the thanking or receiving the thanking. Just that the thanking is kind of a flip of Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I say, I thank, therefore thanking is.
I think, therefore you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like gratitude is entwined into your entire life. It sounds like it's a big part of your day to day. Maybe that's off. And does it also play a role in comedy for you and your physical life as well? I mean, I know it does in the thanking for food and that kind of stuff, but does it also parlay into, your physical self and other parts of your life?
What if I told you I'd never thought about gratitude before this very conversation? How could that be?
I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah. Yeah, you would be right not to. Yes, I would say that, especially more and more lately in the past, I'd say in the past decade, and even perhaps even fewer years, but gratitude has become more and more a part of my life, which here's an angle that I'll take briefly that I hadn't thought of specifically anymore, because I used to think about when I was a kid, I would say I've had sort of a roller coaster of belief systems, not super far off from what a lot of people have,
You've gone through the whole coexist sign.
Yeah, exactly. I like it. That's me. And
sorry.
Oh, you're great. Thank you. I like it. You said a good thing. Yeah, it was nice that you were speaking of a bumper sticker as also providing a little bump along our way.
There you go. Tap tap.
So, but we're not going to stick on that bump. I was thinking about when I was a kid, I didn't really understand prayer. The concept of prayer seemed like wishing in a way that didn't you're okay, so dear God, please bring me what I want. And then, either you did or didn't. And, I grew up Jewish, and it wasn't that we didn't really specifically have a Santa God type situation. But then I eventually came to experience the idea that, perhaps obviously one kind of prayer could be a prayer of gratitude, not for what I want, but what I have, what I already have received that perhaps in the past I did want, and that I do have. And so part of the answer to your question is that every morning, one of the things that I do when I wake up is do a kind of morning pages. I do it on a website called 750words.com. And often the form that it takes, sometimes it's stream of consciousness, sometimes it's jokes, sometimes it's song lyrics or poems, sometimes it's an email to my girlfriend or another loved one or somebody that I want to write to, or if I'm working on a project or whatever it might be. But frequently, if I don't know where to start, I start with gratitude. It's a kind of gratitude journaling where I just think about, and then it kind of becomes a free association of my loved ones, and then what that reminds me of, and my friend Gus, who taught me about Buddhism, and then all the authors and writers and thinkers and speakers that have informed the way that I think and feel and live, and my partner, and our life together, and our recent travels or return from travels, and the shows that I've had that are wonderful, and the all of these things that continue to just grow and grow and spill forth like an avalanche of gratitude. And I realized, especially as I get older, my understanding is like, and no, I don't plan to die. It might happen.
Keep going.
I understand.
Don't
Yeah,
stop.
yeah. My
Can't stop,
girlfriend
won't
and I, yeah, we love each other. We're so happy to be together. We're planning to be together forever. We understand that theoretically, people talk about death as a thing that happens to people. It's happened to people I know. I get it, but like we're not planning on that. So, but we're planning on, forever until we decide, if we decide, but
I like that.
this is all to say, in the paradigm wherein a human life is limited by, in this incarnation, a birth and a death, let's say, or a conception and the opposite of conception after death, if there's one of those 9 months later, who can say, deathception and outception, I assume, if go conception. Okay, anyway, the point is
death becomes us.
Yeah. If at the end of, let's say my life is finite. Let's say my life is finite. And let's say right now, I think the person who's the longest living person right now, the oldest person today, I believe, as of this recording, is 117. That's what they say. So
11-7.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say that I will live to 117, to 117, which means also, I don't know if you can hear, but my girlfriend Rini, who is upstairs in our loft, can hear my side of the conversation, can't hear your side of the conversation, did laugh at me saying 117, which was really just an amplification of your saying it. So I just wanted to pass that along. May your words have brought joy to others.
Thanks for the giggles.
May they continue. And so if I live to that age, then there's a point in the middle, which would be, something like almost 60, looks like 58.5, I guess that was probably right. So at 58.5, there will be more time. Once I'm past that point, there will be more time in the past than in the future. Like right now. Yeah, hypothetically, if I were to die at 90, then the age I am now, 45, like I'm about to turn 46 next month, that will then mean that there is more time behind than ahead. And this sort of makes sense with respect to, like, as a kid, I won't speak for all kids, but as a kid, I was like, I'm looking forward to things like growing up, being able to do things like got my whole life ahead of me. And I think that as we move through life, and we have, regardless of how much life is ahead of us, we definitely have more life behind us. We don't know how much is ahead, but we know now compared to when I was 10, I had 10 years behind me. Now I'm 45. I've got almost 46 years behind me. And so it makes a lot more sense to think about things in terms of gratitude. Like, because if I was not thinking about gratitude for the things that I have and the things that I've done, the things that I've experienced, all of those 46 years, like, I really like that. Here's two things about the French. I mentioned the French with respect to my name. I didn't mention, I really like the way that they say, when I learned French, starting when I was 9, one of the first things we learned was, comment t'appelles-tu, which is the equivalent of what is your name, but literally translates to how do you call yourself, which I think makes a lot more sense, because we're talking about it like it's a verb, like a name. Of course, it is a sound, but a sound exists just for a moment, but it's functional in, here, if you want to get my attention, say this sound, use these sounds. Here's how I call myself, and here's how you can call myself, especially, in this day where sort of, transgender rights and progress are being made and moving forward in a world where we are accepting people, and people are potentially, actualizing who they are, sometimes in the form of choosing a new name to call themselves by. And like, if your parents call you something, if you don't like it for whatever reason, you can change the spelling, you can change the pronunciation, you can change it legally, you can just change it practically and be like, and the French are already there. This is how I call myself. This is how did somebody else call you? They're basically saying, how do you call yourself so that I can call yourself what you call yourself?
Let's call yourself this together.
Exactly. And may it bring everyone joy. The thing about now that in this part of the conversation that French also offers us is, instead of saying I am 45 years old, they
Mhm.
say, I have 45 years.
Mhm.
Like that is, and that makes so much more sense. I mean, I guess I could make it, if I had to argue, I could argue either way, but it definitely makes sense in like, I have lived this time. I have, I don't have possession of those years. Like, where are they?
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
I have experienced them. I have them under my belt, or however you want to think about it metaphorically. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to I mean, it makes sense both to look forward to the future and look, back, hopefully, gratefully, as much as possible on the
Mhm.
past, and to look, nowward into the
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
A quick thing that you didn't ask about, sometimes, here's my thoughts on fate. I
Yeah.
believe in fate for the past. I believe
Mhm.
in free will for the future. And I believe in neither the past nor the future actually existing. So we live in a liminal Schrodinger's space, like,
Yeah.
is it free will? Is it fate? It is perhaps neither and or
Uh,
both at the same time. This is all to say, one of my practices is gratitude journaling, which I think
mm.
does really start off the day. I read a book by a man named Alan Cohen who talked about the formative minutes of
Oh.
the day,
Huh.
like in the same way as the formative years of one's life are really impactful. Like, if you get, enough food, enough physical touch, enough love, shelter, warmth, enough emotional, physical, and spiritual, whatever support, all of that really contributes to your life starting off on a good foot. And
Mhm.
similarly, Alan Cohen puts forth the idea that each day could be like a life, in that the formative minutes of the day, like, it's like I used to, and sometimes when I slip, but in the past, let's say in the past, I would,
That time that
uh,
doesn't exist.
yeah, and I'm grateful for it. I would, in those past times, sometimes as a pastime, look at my phone immediately, and then like look at emails or look at the news or look at social media, like just
Mhm.
get into that stormscape immediately.
Right.
And that's a different way of starting the day than by meditating, than by,
Mhm.
drinking water and reading something peaceful, than by doing morning pages, than by
Mhm.
saying magic time, than by, rabbiting,
Mhm.
uh, and yeah, so I think I honestly don't know. Actually, I think I can pinpoint. I don't know when this was exactly. I could look it up
Mhm.
because I heard a TED. It was a TED talk, like NPR Power Hour or something like that. There was
Mhm.
an hour on NPR where they shared a few snippets of TED Talks, maybe, or
Mhm.
maybe just a bunch of short TED Talks. And these were all themed around gratitude.
Yeah.
And I remember Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk,
Mhm.
was one of the people speaking in this hour. And that, I think, was the first time I ever heard him or heard of him. And now I've read numerous of his books and love them.
Mhm.
And I have like numerous behind me and numerous ahead of me. Who even knows?
It's
He
crazy.
is no longer living, so he has stopped writing them. So I can finish all of them. Thank you, Thich Nhat Hanh,
Exciting.
for your service.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and
like
the thing, yeah,
unwrapping a gift every new book
exactly.
with someone you love like that. Oh, it's such a joy.
It is. And so the thing that he said, that may be the first time that I ever started thinking about gratitude, like practically, actively, in a way other than like on a classic like Thanksgiving, let's go around and say what we're thankful for, but like on a more, like in a more,
Personal.
gently regimented, personal, proactive kind of way.
Mm.
He talked about it, and that gratitude, he said that there was research to show that the happiest people are the most grateful people, and that
Mm.
it's not that it's not that they are grateful because they're happy, that they're grateful for all the things that make them happy, or that they're grateful because of all the happiness that they have, but that
Mhm.
they are happy because they are grateful, that it goes in that direction. That,
Mhm.
like, if you start from gratitude for what you have, then you almost never have to get to the other, let's just do all, let's exhaust this first.
Yeah. Well, it's like if you can enjoy, I know I'm in a good place when I'm able to enjoy drinking water. You know what I mean? It's like that's all we need. All we need is water. We need a comfortable chair. I got a cat in my lap. When I'm able to enjoy those things, doing yard work, picking up apples, doing, the simple day-to-day stuff, then I'm in a place that I'm like, okay, I'm kind of moving in the right direction. I'm in a spot where I'm happy to be. And let's see how we progress, because that's the place that's the pocket I want to exist in primarily, is that one of great gratitude and being present with whatever is happening right now. Hard, easy, fun, indifferent, whatever, because you can find something in all of it.
Yeah. I think it's another Thich Nhat Hanh thing, or someone in his orbit, that said, like, when you do the dishes, like, he's basically like, one of the first books of his I read was called How to Walk. And he's got a whole series of like how to eat, how to relax, how to sit, how to fight, how to love. And in How to Walk, I remember he advocates walking meditation, which is essentially just walking and not doing anything else while you're walking. And just being in contact with the earth. I think he might have said that, the miracle is not that Jesus walked on water. The miracle is that we all can walk on land, on the earth, every moment that we can take a step. And so I remember him saying something about you can do the dishes to get the dishes to be done, or you can do the dishes to do the dishes. And so that's something that, I mean, as a benefit, as a bonus, the dishes do end up getting done. But that's something that I really used to think about in a different, I really turned a corner, and I have some jokes about it in our household. But now I'm not saying that I always do all of the dishes. My girlfriend, sometimes we each do dishes, but frequently when I wake up, if I wake up before my girlfriend and there are some dishes from the night before, I sort of extend my meditative practice to be listening to, a talk, or sometimes watching something, whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm like, part of the morning thing of, I brush my teeth, I do mouthwash, I wash the dishes that are in there, and it makes, my mouth be healthy. It makes the sink be healthy. And it really used to be that I was like, the dishes, I gotta do the dishes. I wish I didn't have to do it. But now I'm like, the dishes, I gotta do the dishes.
Wow.
Totally different tone, because, and it's sort of nice in a way that, again, I feel like there's this, middle pathness of it, where I think about, in Judaism, especially, the more extreme versions of Orthodox Judaism or Hasidism, there are prayers and blessings for every activity that could be done during the day, the food, the drink, the work, the everything. And I think that for some Jews who have this practice, it's not we have to do all these things, but it's calming to know that this is just the order of things that are done. We do before this happens, we do this. After this, we do that. Then we say this, we do that. I do think that there is potentially a risk, and I believe this is borne out in the empirical data, that there may be higher rates of OCD in that population, because if you cling to that too much, to do it gently and lightly, to be yes, this thing, that thing, the next thing, right, whatever the thing is, be it dishes or writing or a podcast or whatever it might be, it is nice. It's nice to be here in this moment with you, Ruby Tuesdays. I think I got that right. I'm reading it right off the screen ahead of me.
We were close. That was close. That was good. That was good. That was good.
I'm sorry, Rudy Tuesdays.
Turbsdals.
Yeah. I have a friend whose name is Rob Turbovsky as well. Ooh. And I feel like you guys should start a club.
I like that. Rudy and Rob Tyburczy Turbovsky. What's his last name?
Turbovsky.
Turbovsky. We are that is Bizarro World versions of each other, it sounds like. Is he a comic?
He is a writer. I met him doing stand-up. I don't know if he still performs, but he is a writer for television and movies now, and
Cool.
sometimes goes by Rob Turbo. I think to eliminate some of the challenges. Yeah, the Obsky, which stands for obstacles. Yeah, Robsticle Turbobstacles is his name. Yeah.
Turbobscoods.
Yeah. But yeah, yes, I think the answer is yes to whatever the question was.
I believe it. Yes, it definitely is. It's usually yes. I think there's a lot of yeses out there. You've mentioned a word that I really appreciate and think about, which is cling. So, and I've been trying to cling less tightly to things, to cling less tightly to most things, even things that I love, because everything is so temporary. And I don't want to, I've read the Four Agreements multiple times. I don't want to take too many things personally, even the things that I love or the compliments that I write down that I wish to remember from people, because that does help us when we see the nice things people have said to us over the course of a day, a week, a month. I was talking with my counselor about those things. And he was like, write them down. Write those things down that people say to you that are nice. And you might be surprised at the end of a month. And I lost the thread at the end of that question. So it was just a ramble. So you got to ramble, Myq. You got me to ramble.
I appreciate it. And I have an answer to your ramble.
Oh, perfect.
So I have two things to share. One, a quote that, do you know James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits?
I've heard of Atomic Habits. I've never met James.
I have not met him, but I receive his newsletter each Thursday, where he gives usually 3 quotes from himself, 2 from others, and a question. And I think he has billed it as like the most quality per minimum quantity on the internet. And this past week, I think, in fact, on Thursday, August 29th, so a couple weeks ago, he shared a quote from Aldous Huxley on approaching life with lightness, even in the face of difficulty. He says, "It's dark because you are trying too hard. Lightly, child, lightly. Learn to do everything lightly. Yes, feel lightly even though you're feeling deeply. Just lightly let things happen and lightly cope with them." I was so preposterously serious in those days, such a humorless little prig. Lightly, it's the best advice ever given me. So throw away your baggage and go forward. There are quicksands all about you, sucking at your feet, trying to suck you down into fear and self-pity and despair. That's why you must walk so lightly. So yeah, I also really like that light has meanings of both like the opposite of dark and the opposite of heavy that I feel like apply in that quote and in general. Like that light, can be warmth and, fire within you. And it also can just be, not getting sucked down into the quicksands. And the other thing specific to clinging, but please, first, you.
No, I just wanted to know more about the things that might make it challenging for you to cling lightly to things, and what things you have a difficult time, taking that advice or living that kind of life around.
Great question, and I think the thing I was about to say will be a nice launch pad to it.
Nice.
I've been learning about Buddhism for many years, and I'm a big fan. And I read,
Big fan.
big fan of Buddhism, big Buddhist fan.
Fan.
Yeah, Buddha fan. And I don't mean to be like a city in Hungary. I don't mean to be a Budapest, but the thing that I heard on a podcast, a discussion of letting go by I think it was Dharma Punks might have been the name of the podcast or something like that. And the guy was giving like a sermon talking about a speech of some kind about letting go, and how ultimately that is if there is a goal, that is something to strive for in the particular practice that was being advocated. And somebody asked a question, or he shared that somebody had once asked a question, like, but do we let go? What about our practices? What about like our meditative practices? What about our Buddhist practices? Are those to be let go of as well? And if the goal is to ultimately to let go or be dragged, they say sometimes, and the teacher giving the talk said, talk, that's a nice one. He was giving a talk. The teacher, I feel like sermon is heavier,
It
speech is heavier.
Lighten
but
it
talk,
up.
A talk, that's just the word. I'm giving a talk.
It's a TED Talk. We're not influencing all of culture. It's just a talk.
Yeah, it's not a TED sermon.
No.
And so he said to the question, what do we do regarding should we not cling to our practices? And he said, early on, when you're starting off, if you're going to cling to anything, cling to the practices, because those are the things that eventually will lead you to not needing to cling to even those practices. And at that point, he's kind of like, when do we do it? When do we He's like, you'll know it. Don't even worry about it right now. Like, just, if you got to cling to the practice.
Yeah.
Until the point at which you learn, internally, from having done the practice, that you no longer need to, or whatever it might be. And so this is to say, as a person myself who has not been diagnosed with OCD, but in my studies of psychology in college, I learned that, certain disorders are essentially clusters of symptoms or clusters of experiences that, rise to the level of being diagnosed as a disorder when at least, some percentage of them are there, and it adversely impacts, the way that you live your life. So if OCD has like 9 symptoms and you technically have it if you have 5 of them or more, like maybe I would have some number closer to 5 than a person who doesn't.
Right.
And so I think that I am coming from a place where there's all these different pieces of sort of spiritual and practical life advice that come from Buddhism or other non-dual types of thinking. Like, it's been said that the Buddha has said things that seem contradictory to other things that the Buddha has said. And that's because different people might need to hear different advice at different times. Like, if you are too tight, then you need to loosen. If you are too loose, then you might need to tighten. And so I am on the tight. I have historically been on the tighter end of the spectrum. And so when your question, which is wonderful, are there specific examples that I can think of things that I do cling to? I'll give you. Yeah, here are some. I was going to say everything in my life, but here are some very specific practical examples that I have right now. Off to my left, I have a shelf full of library books. I'm thankful that the library only permits me to take out 50 books at a time. I'm mostly getting graphic novels from the library. Occasionally, other a nonfiction or a fiction. Yeah. But I also have hundreds of books, many of which I haven't read yet. And so that is I have gone through, before my girlfriend and I moved into this apartment, and then at the last move, every move has been sort of, a nice impetus, a nice catalyst for what do I need? What do I want to literally hold on to, cling to? And the goal is to, have only what we need. But there's this inclination, and we live in a capitalistic society that I think, encourage us towards be like, but what if you need that one? What if that, what about, what if you might, but that one could be, and so
got a lot of the what ifs.
Yeah. And so the library specifically is wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful because I don't have to pay them anything, but I am paying in space on the shelf and time in my life that I'm thinking about. Every once in a while, I get a notification from the library that's like, hey, you've had this one out for a few weeks and we'd like it back at some point. And I'm like, oh God, do I want to read that one? And so the question is I think today, after we talk, I'm going to go through the library books that I have and be like, which ones, the question of which ones if I had an infinite timeline, which as I've established, I don't plan to die, but right now, like, what are the ones, like, if I had an infinite timeline, I'd read them all. But if let's say I have a finite timeline, what are the ones that make me feel the best about, like, what do I want to be reading right now? And like, I am in the middle of a few different books right now that I'm happy to be in the middle of. And then every once in a while I get another one, I'm like, ooh, this one, I'm going to read this one right now. But I also have just like a deep bench, of those. And I also feel similarly about my email inbox. Like, I do my best I use a program called Google Boomerang. Do you know this program?
I do not.
There are probably other versions of it now, but it basically allows me to send emails from my inbox, like out of my inbox into the future. And I'll be like, I schedule them to return. I'm like, I don't need to deal with this one until a week from now, or I want to, you can use it to boomerang them back into the inbox at a time of my choosing.
Gotcha.
But even so, I recently started a new folder in my inbox, in my email, that I call "Read This If You Have Time Sometime." And there's for things that I'm like, I want to read this. I don't have time right now. It's not urgent. It's not even necessarily important, but I'm like, I will get like joy out of it, or I will get, some kind of information I want out of it, but it's not, required for the everyday dealings of my life, or even my, emotional, educational, spiritual growth. I'm like, it'd be great. If I had time to read them all, I would read them all. But now it just feels good I'm like, okay, it's going in the read when you have time file. How many times have I gone into that file to read when I have time? I think if I had to estimate, I would say it's about 0. I don't know if I've literally ever gone into the folder to be like, what's in there? But it's there. They're there. I'm happy that they're there.
Essentially, you're sparing the email's feelings.
I'm not deleting. It's going into a specific place. And you know what I might do? Man, I think this is great. I might go back through at some point and look at like the earliest ones and be like, really try to be honest with myself, and like with a book, and be like, I want to read this. Do I want to read this? If I do really want to read this, and not just want to read this, do I think that I will read it in the next day, week, month, year, given all of the other books and emails that I have and that will continue to be produced and come out? And so here's a sort of relevant to your question and this topic idea that just occurred to me as well. Before Netflix existed and before streaming platforms existed, I used to get, I would buy DVDs, right? I remember Buffy the Vampire Slayer was one of my favorite shows when I was in college and beyond. Yeah. And I remember I was in college when I think it wasn't even a full DVD set of the first season came out. It was just like a VHS, 3 VHS cassettes that each had 2 episodes on them. And I'm like, this is great. I have half a season now. Woo! And eventually the whole season came out on DVD, and I got it. And then the next and the next. And then eventually I was like, wow, I can get everything I want. I can have everything I want. And eventually Netflix existed, and then, Amazon and Max and Hulu and Disney Plus. And at a certain point, like, my grandmother could have literally watched every movie that came out because one came out a week. And then I don't even know how true that is, but there was she only had access to one movie a week. She could see them all. Yeah. And now I have the desire to see all of the good movies, all of the good TV shows, all of the things that I could love. It's beautiful that there are so many things that I could love that like it could induce FOMO. But I try to have it induce, JOMO, the joy of missing out, because the reason that I'm missing out on all of the things that I could love is that there's already my experience being filled with other things that I do love, and I'm choosing to spend my time engaging with, like playing chess on the chess app more times than I need to. But it's really interesting. Like, I mean, so I feel like right now, even I have a list. I have like an email to myself, a draft that's like, here's all like the stand-up specials I want to watch at some point. Here's all the movies that I haven't seen yet that I want to watch. Here's all the TV show seasons. And just every night, my girlfriend and I watch most nights we watch something. And so we're like, chipping away at the near infinite, ever growing list. And so if I think about it in terms of what I haven't done yet, then that would be infuriating. And sometimes I do fall into. I'm like, but I wanted that one. What about that one? But what
Tonight
about
was
this one? Yeah, exactly. So those are ways that I'm striving to, like. So here's the specific takeaway that helped me cling less when I finally realized that I literally couldn't, in a theoretically finite lifetime, I could not watch everything on my list. And so I have to let go of that. And you know who's helpful in this? Do you know Oliver Berkman? He
sounds familiar.
He wrote a book called 4,000 Weeks, the subtitle of which is Time Management for Mortals. And one of the things that he has offered that is really helpful is he's like, think of your to-do list, and I'll say even more so, think of your queue of entertainment that you want to take in as a menu, and not as an exhaustive list of things that must be completed, but in terms of, like, you go to a restaurant, you're like, oh, I want to order everything on this. Sometimes I go to a vegan restaurant as a vegan person, and I'm like, I would like to order one of everything, but that would not be healthy or financial. It would not be, health-wise or financial health-wise possible.
Makes no sense, except for the joy part.
Yes. So just think about it as a menu, literally, if it's a menu, and for the to-do list for the movie queue to be like, oh, what do I feel like dining on tonight?
And that was the episode for this week. I was so delighted to have that conversation. And you know what? It continues for like another hour. And you are going to get to hear that next freaking week. So make sure to come back and check out our remaining conversational topics, which include things such as more choices and how to pick amongst all of them, how to find a balance between passion and monetization, and how that impacts your creativity. We talk about embracing joy, letting go of attachments, and all sorts of stuff that is just delightful for me to converse with Myq Kaplan about. Myq Kaplan. I don't know what that pause was for, but I made it. And you are going to have to put this show on pause for another week. We will be back in a week with our next episode with Myq. So return for the sequel of Myq Kaplan right here on Jokes in the Gym.
Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Not jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. Jokes in the gym. With Rudy Tyburczy.
Whoa, what you've done is good.